things have to change. Paul Warne has to go. Derby County fall to a 7th defeat in a row, and 6 of those being in the league, as Cardiff City take away a 2-1 victory to secure all 3 points at the Cardiff City Stadium. And ultimately, no one else could have not predicted this result. Anybody who put money on Derby County to win today had absolutely no idea what they were doing. Derby County now find themselves 22nd in the league, 2 points away from Portsmouth in 21st. We're now solidly in the drop zone, and up next is Sheffield United, the second place team in the league, but ultimately they should be leading the way if they didn't have their points deducted. Now, obviously, the only positive you can really take from this game is that Lars Jorgen Salvesen scored on his full debut after 71 minutes. It was a really nice header. I think the cross was by Jerry Yates. They linked up quite well across the course of the game. But if we look at Cardiff City, then it's one of those for me where ultimately for 60 minutes, Derby County were well in this game and had an excellent opportunity to go and take 3 points. But 2-3 minutes of madness saw Robinson and El Ghazi score. The first goal, Zetterstrom has to do much better, parrying the ball into the path of Robinson. The second, Derby County were cut apart and El Ghazi picked it up in the 64th minute. Now, for me, it is time to make a change. And don't get me wrong, we made some changes in the squad today. Blackett-Taylor started, obviously Salvesen started, Niambi was back in the team, and obviously Erin Cashin as well. Now, for me, the big conversation has to be about our injury situation. Another couple of injuries today with Blackett-Taylor and Callum Elder going out. That ultimately means we now don't have a left wing back available. Craig Forsyth currently having to fill in at centre half. Obviously, with the news of Matt Clark potentially coming in over the course of the next few days, that opens up that centre half position for Fozzie to move out wide. But then obviously Blackett-Taylor picking up that injury, in my opinion, was probably one of the better players on the pitch at the start and throughout this game. Created many opportunities today. Now, for me, I think what we have to talk about is the Einstein quote I spoke about a few weeks ago. I've mentioned it a few times on Twitter if you're following me over there. But insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting the same results. And that's what we're doing with Paul Warne. 25 games, nosediving down to League One. We're in a terrible position right now. And there has to be a change. There has to be something. Something has to give, because Paul Warne just doesn't know what to do. I think over the course of the last 19-20 games, I think we're averaging 0.7 points per game at the moment, and that is on Paul Warne. And the thing is, everyone likes to point out the players, but what you have to acknowledge is Paul Warne picked these players, Paul Warne picks these tactics, Paul Warne assigned every single player in this squad. No one else has. Paul Warne has. Even Freddie Turley, the youngster who's on the bench, Paul Warne picked him to come up to the first team. And yes, it's really nice to see David Ozo back involved, but ultimately I can't see him changing anything. As I said in midweek, and as I've said time and time again, Lars Jorgen Salvesen and bringing back David Ozo and Ryan Niambi doesn't make Derby County a team that's going to average 1.4 points a game, which is what we need now to stay in the division. We need, I think it's 23 points to hit 50, and ultimately I don't think we're going to do that. I think at the moment we'll be lucky if we hit 40, maybe even 45 at a push, but we're in a really difficult position. The only positive that comes out of today is Pompey lost 5-0. They got absolutely thrashed by West Bromwich Albion. Luton Town lost earlier today. Plymouth Argyle picked up another point, closing the gap at the bottom of the table. They're now on 22, so we're 5 points ahead of them, but we're starting to see that gap build. From 19th to 18th is 2 points. 18th to 17th is 3 points. Derby County are 2 points away from Portsmouth. And the conversation has to be about Paul Warne. It has to be. You can't take it away from Paul Warne. I've said my piece on this over the course of the last few weeks, and obviously a couple of weeks ago I made that video about which managers could replace Paul Warne. Obviously Tony Mowbray is now off that list. I believe everyone else is still available, and for me, David Clowes has to make a call. He has to make that call, and Paul Warne has to go. Now, ultimately, I've got a video dropping tomorrow about Paul Warne's transfer plans over the course of the next 10 days up until the end of this transfer window. But whether Paul Warne will get the opportunity to fulfil the next 10 days, I don't know. I don't even think it's 10 days. I think it's about 8. But you get my point. And we spoke earlier today about Matt Clark and how he fits into this team. And ultimately, yes, Matt Clark would make us a better team, but it doesn't change the situation we're in where we're doing the same thing over and over again. And it just doesn't work. And I've got BBC Radio Derby in my ear today, and they're obviously talking about right now how we could have got something out of this game, because we could have, but ultimately it could have been 4-5-6-0 today, and that's exactly what Malcolm Christie has just said. And this is something which we have to talk about, because we have opportunities to score goals, we don't do it. And I've said it time and time again, we create poor quality chances. In the first half, Lars Jorgen Salvesen had a really good chance. I think it was from a Jerry Yates cross, but again, it was a bouncing ball, it was a volley. They're one of the hardest chances to score. You go to, obviously, set pieces, which Paul Warne's obsessed with, difficult chances to score. Headers are difficult. Now, don't get me wrong, Jorgen Salvesen scored a header today, but when you're trying to score those difficult opportunities, like it's difficult, isn't it? It's really difficult. I genuinely have no words on what to say, because how can we keep going like this time and time again? And Osborne, in my opinion, I don't know. I just don't know what he's doing. Like, genuinely gives the ball away time and time again. Kenzo, realistically, over the course of the last few months, hasn't been the same player. And for me, we're easy to play against, we're easy to defend against, and that just shows in the results. Cardiff City today scored 2 goals today. Now, don't get me wrong, if we go through their fixtures, they've scored recently, but they've scored, 2 goals in one. They've scored 2 goals in 1 game at the moment since the turn of the year. 3 games, and they're all their final 3 games. So 4 since the turn of the year. And Derby County need to make changes, and they need to do it now. We're now ending up in a position where we're in a really, really difficult position. Relegation is hanging over us, and that comes down now to David Clowes, and David Clowes has to make the call. We go back a few weeks ago. It wasn't even a few weeks ago. It was at the start of this week. And this is the problem. We go back a few weeks ago, not even a few weeks, and that's that Paul Warne's been backed by David Clowes. And what can we say? What can we say, genuinely? David Clowes has backed Paul Warne. Paul Warne never seems to be under any pressure, and we're in the mud. 24, 25 games, I think we've got 16, 17 points. It hasn't changed since the table I showed you in the last couple of videos. And it just continues to keep going. It continues to keep going. And that is always going to happen with Paul Warne. It's never going to change, because Paul Warne isn't a manager that knows anything about Championship survival. And that shows with the results he's picked up for Rotherham, with the results he's picked up for Derby County this season. It continues to go and go and go. And it isn't going to change. But Paul Warne has to move, and it has to happen. It has to happen now. Things have to change. Paul Warne has to go. David Clowes needs to make a decision, or he needs to sell up. And do you know something? I've lost the plot. Clowes has to make a decision. It has to happen. If he's not going to make a decision, he's sending us down to League One, and that is on David Clowes, and that is on Paul Warne. A 4-year contract for a League One manager was not the right call. We know that. It is ridiculous that we're in this position. Absolutely ridiculous. Why has David Clowes made these calls to keep and back this manager that has consistently, over the course of his managerial career, shown that he cannot do it at this level? Now, it baffles me, genuinely baffles me, that we are in this position. I predicted that we were going to lose this game. Time and time again, like, you can predict what's going to happen with Derby County. It's wide and cross, wide and cross, wide and cross. Obviously, that's all we do. We're easy to defend against. We're easy to score against. It is a fucking joke, and it has to change, and it has to change now. And for me, I don't know. Now, realistically, Clowes needs to find investment, and quickly. We need to get rid of Paul Warne. It all needs to happen over the course of the next few weeks. I think this team has more than enough to stay up in this division, and I think what Paul Warne is showing is not what this team can give. And we're going to have to wait. We're going to have to see what happens. Obviously, tomorrow I've got that video dropping about Paul Warne's transfer window and what we're potentially going to do over the course of the next few weeks, with obviously needing centre-backs. We now probably need a left-back. We probably need another winger now. So we're in a real bit of shit right now, and that is going to fall on to the knees of David Clowes, onto the knees of Paul Warne. Changes need to happen, and they need to happen now. If you have not done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, turn on that notification bell, and I'll catch you in the next one.